Hello, my name is Mike Grimshaw and I'm a Senior Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing Practitioner at Young Minds Matter, and today I'm going to be delivering a training session on physical activity and physical health and the benefits for our mental health. Usually this session would be developed or would be delivered face to face, but unfortunately due to the current situation we're having to do videos. So we're going to have all the information there, but there is, if you have any questions or anything like that, you can always contact us on our advice line. Okay, let's get straight into it. So the first thing we really need to be asking is, so why does it matter? Why does physical activity and our physical health matter so much for our mental health? I've got some stats that I want to talk about and to show actually the disparity between people with mental health conditions and their physical health. So for example, people with mental health conditions, they're more likely to have poor physical health care. In part, it's due to higher risk behaviours. So, for example, smoking and alcohol. People that with mental health conditions are more likely to smoke, so they're therefore more likely to have respiratory problems and cardiac problems. They find it harder to both stay and obtain in work, and as we know, actually being in work is very beneficial for our emotional well-being, and therefore keeps us busy, keeps us active, keeps us into a routine, which all helps our routine around our physical health. They have lower incomes, and as we know from lots of research, lower incomes, you have poorer physical health outcomes. So again, high rates of respiratory disease, high rates of cardiac disease. You're more likely to be homeless. People with mental health far more likely to be homeless. And you're more likely to live in areas of social deprivation. So very similar to what I've just said, they're more likely to have those lower incomes. And in areas of social deprivation, we know there's higher substance misuse, there is higher levels of smoking, there's more alcohol. So all of those things point to poorer physical health outcomes. So the mortality rate among mental health service users at age 19 and over in England was 3.6 times higher than the general population. So someone with a mental health condition is 3.6 times more likely to die earlier than somebody from the general population. So people in contact with mental health services, they're more likely to die from deaths of disease of the respiratory system. They're just over 4 times more likely to die from deaths of disease of the digestive system. Nearly 3 times the rate of death from diseases of the circulatory system. And that just doesn't make sense to me. It isn't right. Why should anyone with mental health conditions have such higher rates of dying from these diseases? Less likely to have their physical health needs identified or to receive appropriate treatment. Now, the big key is something called diagnostic overshadowing, which is very common among healthcare workers and among other practitioners. Because somebody has a mental health condition, you attribute everything what they're saying to their mental health condition. So, for example, somebody with a mental health condition goes to their doctor and they start talking about how they're often feeling very sick, and their doctor might say, well, I know you have an anxiety condition, it's because you're feeling anxious. Well, actually, it might have nothing to do with that. It could very well be they had a physical health problem, but it's been attributed to their level of anxiety. So people with severe mental illnesses receive a poorer standard of care for a range of conditions, including diabetes and heart failure, and are less likely to receive medical treatment for arthritis. And that's come back to that diagnostic overshadowing I'm sort of talking about. And also, that, for me, is completely wrong. Why should somebody with a mental health condition therefore have a poorer standard of care if they have diabetes, which is absolutely nothing to do. Okay. That's why it's so important, and it is so important to educate young people around physical health and their mental health, because as it's been shown, it's so closely linked, and there are a huge amount of benefits from physical activity. So physical activity is positively associated with youth emotional well-being. So Arne and Fedauer found that physical activity had a small but significant effect on children's mental health. More specifically, physical exercise can reduce stress, depression, anxiety, and increase children's self-esteem. And if we think about sort of exam periods, we know that people are going to feel very stressed, They're going to feel very anxious. Because they're feeling very stressed and very anxious, their mood might also dip. And if they don't feel that they're able to do it, it's likely that their self-esteem is going to dip. So while we're talking about a very specific period, such as an exam period, we know physical activity will then help with all those additional pressures that come with it. Okay. So the benefits of physical activity on depression. There are huge amounts of benefit. So youths who reported higher levels of engagement in physical activity and less leisure screen time, so we're talking about using our mobiles, we're talking about playing our PlayStation or our Xbox, they also reported lower levels of depressive symptoms. And this was a really big study looking at a whole range of young people and looking at their levels of happiness and their mood, and what it found was that those who were more active were generally happier. In a qualitative study, so adolescents with depression engaged in physical exercises of preferred intensity, whatever they wanted to do, the exercise they chose, it doesn't matter. In addition to therapy, so they are going to some therapy, either a group or one-to-one, reported mood improvement, a sense of achievement, increased energy and motivation for positive change. And that is compared with a young person that was purely just doing therapy. So the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, so they are the people that recommend the treatments, recommended that people with mild to moderate depression take part in 3 sessions a week, lasting about 45 minutes to 1 hour over 10 to 14 weeks. And actually, if you look at that advice is not that different from what we are told by the government that we should all be doing. You know, three times 30 minutes a week of moderate activity. So it's not too much more. And activity is considerably cheaper than medication, for example. It's considerably cheaper than going to a therapist. It's considerably cheaper than being at your GP fairly regularly for checkups, when actually we know exercise, is a fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So cognitive function, the benefits on our cognitive function. So cognitive function is how we think, the speed of it, how we process information, just how our brain works, really. Most of the time our cognitive function will be fine, but we know it can be impacted by different things. We can also improve it, and physical activity is one of those things. So how does it do it? How can we do it? Well, within our body we have hundreds of little cells called neurons. When we put those cells together, we call them nerves, and it makes up our nervous system. Now, within our brain, we have to pass information down our nervous system. So we will do it by using something known as a neurotransmitter, of which there are hundreds. But the one we're going to talk about is serotonin, and I imagine a lot of people will have heard of serotonin. Why is it serotonin so important? Well, it's so important because it stimulates the release of endorphins, which is a neuromodulator, which then leads to a release of dopamine, which makes you feel good, makes you feel happy, gives you that little boost. If you eat chocolate, for example, it produces a little bit of dopamine, makes you feel good. If you go to the gym and you get exercise, it produces some endorphins, which then produce the dopamine, which then makes you feel good, which is why you feel good after exercising. Interestingly, cocaine is what is producing so much dopamine in the body, which is why people will take cocaine, because it gives them that pleasure, that little pleasure boost. Okay. So what do we think helps produce serotonin? I think if you listen to the rest of this presentation, or you've heard this presentation, I think you could probably guess. Exercise, of course. Of course exercise helps produce serotonin. That is why it's so strongly recommended by NICE, so strongly recommended by lots of different practitioners of exercise. We know it produces it, we know it improves mood. Sunlight. Sunlight is a really big producer of serotonin. Obviously in this country we don't always get a huge amount of light, which is why when we do have it, especially in the summers, it is important to make sure we get all that natural sunlight. Sleeping, friendship. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's there. Music. I think that's supposed to be singing. I think I'm supposed to be Supposed to be putting it down with the music. Okay, so all of those things help. And we're going to look a little bit about sleep and food, because sleep and food also affects our mental health and how we're thinking. Okay, so sleep. Sleep is so important, absolutely so important. And we're going to start here. So we have a lack of sleep one day. And we feel tired, which is obvious. If we've not been sleeping, we're going to feel tired. So then we come round and we have difficulty coping with our daily life, or our resilience. And I know within myself, if I've not slept, or if I'm very, very tired, I might be a little bit more irritable, a bit more snappy. Things might anger me, irritate me a lot more than they maybe would have normally because I'm so tired. It may lead sort of that low self-esteem. I can't cope with these things, therefore I'm unable to do them. You might start worrying about them. You might get very stressed about them. And we know that stress and anxiety and worry then impacts upon our sleep, and then we have less sleep. And as you can see, it keeps going round in a circle. So food and mood. Why is food so important? So when you don't eat enough nutrient-rich food, your body may lack sort of vital vitamins and minerals that it needs to keep it going, to produce the different hormones, neurotransmitters, neuromodulators. Our body produces 100,000 of them. And we need all the vitamins and minerals to be able to produce all of them. So, this is a little bit of it from the British Dietetic Association about foods actually, how they make us feel. Foods can make us feel positive, and foods can make us feel negative. So in terms of our positive foods, we're looking at nuts, seeds, tofu, lentils, beans, eggs, salmon, food rich in unsaturated fatty acids like walnuts and almonds. Just go with nuts, walnuts, almonds on that one. Lean meat, lamb, so eggs again, beans, chickpeas. So these are all foods that make us actually boost our mood. But what about reducing our mood? Now the big one is caffeine. We know that caffeine's in lots and lots of different things. It's naturally produced, but it's most commonly sort of ingested in sort of tea and coffee. We know if taken to excess, it will cause anxiety, irritation. It will reduce our mood. Sugar, lots of refined sugar, chocolate, cookies, soft drinks, say Coke, Pepsi, Fanta, all of those kind of things. We know all of that refined sugar will lead to a slight dip in mood. And the same with sort of fatty and high calorie food like junk food and fast food. If we're taking it into excess, it will affect us. Now, all of what we're saying here is in excess. You know, there's nothing wrong with having, you know, some adjunct tea myself, having a cup of coffee, having a cup of tea. There's nothing wrong with having some fast food or some sugar and some chocolate and some biscuit, but in moderation. I think that's the key to this bit. Why do we eat? You know, I think we probably all know why we eat, but we eat because the ability to concentrate comes from our energy. So we eat for energy. You know, our bodies need two things. It needs oxygen and it needs glucose, and we get our glucose from eating. The brain uses 20% of all the energy needed by the body, which is quite a lot when you consider it, with everything else that's going on, which often, you know, if you're thinking or you're very stressed about something, you're straight away tired because your brain is using so much of that energy. It comes from the glucose in our blood comes from all the carbohydrates we eat. So it could be food, fruit, vegetables, cereals, bread, rice, potatoes, sugar, lactose in milk, anything with sugar in it is glucose effectively. But our body can produce glucose from sort of other things that we eat. Now, I'm not really going to go through this slide. I've left it in there purely for sort of information only. So it's looking at the different minerals and how it can then affect our physical health. So I'm just going to go with iron, which is very common that people will have low iron. They'll often feel weak, tired, very lethargic, they'll have a lot of energy. It can affect mood. I've had a young person that I was seeing who, when they started taking iron tablets, their mood very, very quickly improved. And it also led them, because they were feeling less tired, they had more energy, they were therefore being able to be more active, which then led to them, again, as we've discussed, feeling much brighter, their mood improving. So it's really important to have a look at, actually, do we have everything that we need? I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I am going to talk a little bit more about caffeine. So caffeine is naturally found in over 60 different types of plants. We know it's a stimulant, we know it keeps you alert, we know it keeps you awake. It's often found in coffee, tea, energy drinks, fizzy drinks, so things like Coca-Cola, things like Pepsi, chocolate, some painkillers will have caffeine in it. Salad, for example, you get this lot of caffeine in salad, actually small amounts within the plant, so it is everywhere. It's very, very difficult to avoid. But there are certainly some very negative effects if we have too much caffeine. Some of these effects: heart palpitations, dizziness, nausea, irritability, needing to go to the toilet more, shaking, trouble sleeping, headaches, feeling tired. All of these things from too much caffeine. So what would be the symptoms of a panic attack? So if we're thinking, right, this person is panicking, they're feeling correct, what would we be looking for? We'd be looking for heart palpitations, we'd be looking for dizziness, nausea, irritability, needing the toilet more, shaking, trouble sleeping, headaches, feeling tired. All very, very similar. Coming back to diagnostic overshadowing, like I talked about earlier, it's important as well when we're assessing someone, for anxiety, for panic. Actually, is this panic, is this anxiety, or is this being caused by something such as caffeine and energy drink? And I can give an example of a young person I was working with, and after about 4 weeks of working with them, it was for anxiety, I learned that they were having a huge amount of caffeine, and I do mean a huge, huge amount. So she agreed 1 week that she was going to cut down to 2 cups a day. She was going to she always bought a cup from the shop on her walk to school in the morning. She'd have that one, and she would have the one when she gets in from home. Within the space of a week, she described to me not feeling anxious anymore. That was about 2 years ago. I've never seen her again. Which I think just shows you how much of an effect caffeine can have. And actually, I think as adults, we also need to look at ourselves and think, how much caffeine are we having when we're stressed, when we're getting anxious about things? But we're reverting back to our coping mechanisms, which might be having tea, it might be having coffee, it might be having chocolate. Actually, are we having far too much caffeine? So why have we presented this? What is it about physical health, activity, and mental health that we actually think is really important for people to know? And there's sort of 3 reasons. It's the foundations of self-care. Absolutely. From all the reasons we've talked about today, eating well, exercising, sleeping well, reducing our caffeine, all of those things we know have a positive impact on us. So they are the foundations of what we need to do to stay well. Make sure we're not having too much caffeine, make sure we're exercising, make sure our sleep is well, make sure we're eating right. And of course, it doesn't have to be perfect every single day, and there's going to be slips at times in our life, but it is important to keep that healthy. Maslow's hierarchy of need. We've all seen Maslow's hierarchy of need when we're working at what are the very bottom? At the very, very bottom, we're looking at shelter, we're looking at sleep, we're looking at food, we're looking at drink, and all of those things are very, very basic needs. Before we can do, say, within our service, we have to be able to do that work. We need to make sure those needs are being met. We're unable to move up if they're not. So if somebody isn't getting sleep, they're not eating right, they don't have that shelter, it's very, very difficult for a mental health service when those foundations of our self-care are not there. And the 5 ways to well-being. We know that a lot of the things I've been talking about today, they won't be new subjects, and we know that they are big part of the 5 ways to well-being, and we really want to sort of promote it. We want to promote healthy eating, we want to promote positive sleep, hygiene, we want to promote positive exercise and positive activity because of everything we've talked about today and the benefits towards our mental health. So that's it from today. So usually when we would be sort of face to face, we'd be able to answer questions, but obviously we can't do that. But if people are interested, people would like some more information, or they would like to ask any questions, they can always contact us on our advice line. And I'm sure wherever they're watching this video, that information will be there. And I'd just like to remind everyone to please fill out those post-session measures that you'll have done. You've done all the pre-ones before watching the videos. Please fill them in, because we do value any feedback, and we're always trying to sort of improve our training. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you find it useful. Thank you.